We're seeing a lot of stuff happening in Chicago. They're doing some very expensive things like the migrant crisis, spending $200-300 million on the migrant crisis instead of spending $300 million on Chicago themselves. There's food deserts everywhere. There's a lot of local businesses leaving. There is a massive exodus of companies. For example, in the past couple of years, you have the famous Citadel and Boeing all leaving Chicago. This is enormous amounts of revenue just leaking out of the city. A lot of these cities are ran pretty well, and they have a major amounts of wealth, and there's also a lot of legacy. Many companies go to Chicago because other companies are there, but now it's 2024, and a lot of these companies are simply just leaving. Places like Miami are getting way more cash than ever before, and Miami, for example, Vegas and Austin are investing in themselves, which makes it super appealing for major real estate development and especially businesses. Check this out. Bring home Chicago real estate transfer tax will chill multifamily housing developments. Now, remember, the Chicago blood is going to be flowing through the real estate markets, not residential. So when Bring Home Chicago says that this is kind of shifted towards the residential sector, not really. This is most likely punishing and taxing the commercial real estate transactions, which, by the way, nobody's buying Chicago commercial real estate. In fact, they should be doing the complete opposite, offering tax cuts and tax breaks and different incentives to get people to buy these massive commercial real estate sectors. Like, for example, in Hong Kong, right? They have a terrible real estate market right now. But guess what? They're not making any new taxes. They're actually adding in more incentives, more ways to get investors into the city to invest in real estate, get their companies in, offer different tax incentives. Now, that's a very, very good move. But why Chicago? Are they doing this to make the real estate market better? No. Chicago is basically adding in a new transfer tax, which is going to absolutely destroy the multifamily housing developments, just residential in general, and especially the commercial real estate. So anything above $1 million. Remember, these major cities, $1 million is nothing. $1 million is like a shed in New York City or a studio apartment. Now check this out. CME CEO Duffy says firm is prepared to leave Chicago if they have to. If you guys don't know CME, it's the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. This is a major exchange in Chicago that makes Chicago famous for finance because all of the orders from Wall Street flows to Chicago. That's why they're so wealthy. Okay, what if they leave? Well, I guess all the orders are flowing somewhere else, and Chicago is basically screwed. They keep doing this sort of stuff, adding in enormous amount of taxes. Taxes are good to raise funds for a city, but when it becomes draconian and when it becomes super high, people just simply leave. You have to find that perfect balance, which is why a lot of people are moving away. And guess what? Even without this Bring Home Chicago bill, Chicago area commercial property sales are down 44% in 2023. Prices are super duper cheap. We're talking about 90% off, 80% off, 70% off in the Loop area, which is one of their best neighborhoods in Chicago for business and finance. Look at this. Sales down 44% is an enormous thing to see. This is not something you want to see for any city. If you compare this to other cities like, for example, Sydney, Melbourne, Singapore, they're all up, or at the very least, not going down 44 whopping percent, guys. This is a very, very scary number that people are not catching on. City of Chicago has basically been spending every single penny on the migrant crisis. People say that the whole reason why they're doing this transfer tax is to pay for the migrant crisis. Now, if they use this transfer tax to promise to do enormous amounts of infrastructure development, get local businesses in, maybe it'll work, right? But they're doing this to raise more money for homelessness, which I'm not really sure why Chicago doesn't have money for that. Many people are saying that they're spending so much money on the migrant crisis, they don't have enough money for the homeless population and other crime situations. So this is kind of like their solution to get more transfer tax, more money in. But what they don't really understand is sales are down. Okay, Chicago is not a desirable place for people to spend money. And this is why a lot of people are just simply leaving. And guess what? Commercial real estate is basically down the dumps for Chicago, and it's only going to get worse. Nobody's really buying these buildings, and office vacancies are absolutely through the roof. Can Chicago recover? I'm not really sure.